Want a way to set up NAS but don't have a lot of hardware? Want to set up a backup NAS for those just in case situations? Stay tuned and I will show you how to install OpenMediaVault 5. Welcome to another edition of Tech Bytes with Ron Nutter, your home for all things relating to smart home technology. In this episode, we're going to talk about how to set up OpenMediaVault 5 on a Raspberry Pi in your smart home. Hi, I'm Ron Nutter and we're going to be working on this together. This content is also available as an Amazon Flash briefing or podcast. Please go to techbyteswithronnutter.com for more information. For any items mentioned in this episode, there are affiliate links in the description. If you click on these links, I will get a small commission, but that won't affect the price you pay for the item. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please click subscribe now and enable notifications. If this video helps you or provides value, please click on that like button, thumbs up. Now, here's what we're going to be covering. First of all, what is OpenMediaVault? And if you haven't heard of it, don't feel bad. There's a lot of options out there and we're going to cover them. Then we're going to talk about the parts list, what you're going to need to do this. And you probably have most of what you need. If not, it's not going to be that expensive. Then we'll go through installing OpenMediaVault and then configuring OpenMediaVault. And with what we're doing today, this is just going to scratch the surface. But let's go ahead and get started. Well, to get the ball rolling, we're going to first talk about what is OpenMediaVault. And it's one of a series of options that are out there of what are called network attached storage. This can be almost any type of computer that you can think of, including the Raspberry Pi, which is what we're going to be building ours on. You can use a collection of drives. They need to be matched in size to make this work right. Or you can do a bunch of individual drives, but then you won't have the option of having yourself protected if a drive fails. So it's any number of things you can do with this. There are all sorts of plugins you can get for OpenMediaVault. You can have it attached to a PC attached to it for storing files. You can have a Mac attached to it. The sky's the limit. And one of the things that we're going to be doing in this particular video is getting the groundwork made for automatically syncing this with another network attached storage system that I've already got. So after all, you're not, what is being said by some folks is you're not supposed to use this as backup. Well, okay, but if you run out of room on your PC, where are you going to put the files? So you got to put them somewhere. Then what we're also going to look at doing is, in later videos, syncing this with another NAS system. So if something happens to the primary system, then we've got one to fall back on. So let's go ahead and review the parts you're going to need to have. Well, now we're going to get started with the parts list. I'm going to use the Raspberry Pi 4. That's the latest version of what's out there. Your choice as to what memory version you get of it. Now, to make sure we're doing this safely, I'm going to be showing you a USB power meter because your first inclination is probably going to be, let's just plug it in the Raspberry Pi. No, there are some limitations, and we're going to go over why you need to think about using an external powered hub. Now, this is the powered hub I'm going to be working with. One I happen to have laying around. There's a host of them out there. You may not need the one with 7 ports on. Again, that's what I had readily available. But you do want one that has power because you don't want to have the Raspberry Pi trying to power all those drives. Because if you look at the specs for the Raspberry Pi 3 and 4, there is a max power available on the USB ports of 1.2 amps. Well, that doesn't sound like you're going to need a whole lot. But as you'll see here in a little bit, the USB drives, external USB drives, when they come up initially can pull about a half an amp on startup for just a little bit. So if you got 3 attached, that's an amp and a half. And if you're maxing out at 1.2 amps, then you may have a challenge, but you can't count on that being there. For example, one time when I accidentally had my powered hub unplugged on my earlier OpenMediaVault, I got rudely awakened when things had to reboot and only one drive came up because that was all that the Raspberry Pi can handle. So just because the specs say you can do it doesn't mean that you can't. So this is a good reason why to use a powered hub, because you don't want to put any more stress on the Raspberry Pi that you're using than is absolutely necessary. So let's go ahead and get this started. In this version of OpenMediaVault 5, you don't have a pre-built image to start with. So you actually were going to have to go ahead and get the Raspberry Pi image on an SD card, and then you actually go through a series of commands to get it to where you need it to be. So first thing we're going to do is, I've already got my card reader sitting off to the side here. So we'll plug it into my Intel NUC, and we should see a message come up here in just a second. There we go. It says, all right, fine, whatever. Don't really care about that one. So we'll go over here to brw-rw, and there's Rufus. There's several options out there that you can use to burn an image onto an SD card. So we'll go down here to Raspbian Buster, and you can see it's already got that. It's already found the USB drive, and then we'll click on Flash. If you've already burned a card, then you've got this. I'm just doing this to help those who've never done this before get a step ahead in the game. Okay, as you can see, we've got this all ready to go. So now we're going to take the SD card out of the card reader, put it in the Raspberry Pi, and then we'll actually go through an initial boot up on that and do the rest of the commands. And as always, when I create a new image, I forgot to do one important step. So we'll exit out of brw-rw because we don't need it for this one, but we need to enable SSH out of the gate so that we can get that to work. So what we'll do here is we'll just go down somewhere in the list on the SD card, and we'll say new text document. We'll call this SSH and delete the file extension. Actually, it doesn't have to be capitals. I don't know why I'm doing caps today, because all it's got to be is SSH, and then Raspberry Pi OS will see that when on initial boot and automatically enable it, so we can go and get in remotely. We don't have to get a keyboard and everything attached, because trust me, it's nice when you can do it that way. Okay, I've got my Raspberry Pi stack over here, so I'm going to slide out the top Raspberry Pi and carefully turn it over so we don't undo the connection for the fan that's in the case I've got from the folks at C4 Labs. And this is if you've got a collection of Raspberry Pis like I already have, and you may be collecting, then this is going to be handy to have. So again, making sure I didn't get the leads disconnected. I've got the SD card in place, so we'll slide it in here. And I will go ahead and plug in the network connection, because on a NAS system, I've not had good luck with putting in a wireless connection, because wireless is not friendly to NAS. So let me get the power supply plugged in here, because that's going to be another thing that we have to do. So we'll just go ahead and plug this in, and then we should see the little light come up, the fan spins up. So now we'll give it a bit, and then we'll be able to go ahead and continue. All right, now we've got the Raspberry Pi booted up and everything. So we'll first log in using the default credentials, and you should change your password here at some point. Now I'm going to do something right now, and you see the Raspi config. So we'll do sudo raspi config, and I'm going to change the host name, and it's easier to change the host name here than it is going through other places. So I'm just going to change it to OMV 5, as I'm only going to have one system running on OMV at this point. No, I'm not going to reboot. Now, the next thing we're going to want to do is we've got a series of commands that we're going to need to go through, and I've already got it set up in place. First, we're going to need to go through an update, and this is all from the directions that are in the PDF that's on the OMV site. Used to be, like I said, you had a master image, but now they've gone to this. So we're going to walk through all the steps so you can see exactly what I'm doing. And then what we're going to hope for is in OMV4, I actually had to go into the command line and use something called mdadm, I guess multi-disk admin is what it stands for, and manually build the array and everything. So I'm hoping this time that we're not going to have to do that. So that command executed. And you can probably stack a bunch of these up. I prefer not to, just in case something happens. Then we can go ahead and see the errors a little bit easier. And we'll speed this up here just to help this move along so you don't have to watch the whole thing in slow motion. Okay, now it got to the end of that sequence. So let's go back here, and there is we need to remove this one link here. Right click, and we will tell it to restart session. Okay, and see now it's already changed to OMV5. Well, you can't see that. Let me drop that. So it's down there in the lower left-hand corner. So it's already taken our name, and we'll mark this whole line, and we will copy that, paste here, and this is the new way of doing it. So we'll see how this works, and then we should be ready to go into OMV here in just a little bit. Okay, as you can see, it did complete, and it changed its IP address. So something about the MAC address may have changed. So we'll call it admin, and then OpenMediaVault. Again, you will want to get your passwords changed. And we'll say just close that one. So now, I mean, we're up and going. So what we want to do is go under update management. We'll see if there's any updates. Okay, looks like we had pretty much all ones there. So we'll go ahead and grab that one because that's what the directions say to do when you're first getting started. Just as you get everything on the latest release. So it looks like the script pretty much picked everything up new because I was expecting a few more updates to be required. Just to make note, this took about 23 minutes. So if I had not sped things up, you'd have been sitting here for a while. And out of respect, I didn't want to do that one. So at this point, it's only going to show us just the SD card. So now let's move over to demo cam, and let me first, this is the powered USB hub. So I've got to bring the power for it over, and that goes in right here, and you see the light came on, so we're good there. So we will plug that into there. We'll put it into a USB 3 port. So that's got us started. And before we can put in just our first drive, I'm not going to bring them all up at once. And actually, I'm going to show you something here if I can get everything to align right. I'm going to bring the USB power meter into play. And I can leave it online for a little while, so that's not going to be a problem. But I want you to see the potential power usage if I can. Okay, I got to turn the hub upside down here. Okay, so we will do So you can see right now we're getting just a little under 5 volts. I'm not too worried about that one. I'm going to move it down here because I'm going to have a specific order I'm going to hook the drives up in. So that's, you can see it's, let the camera autofocus kick in here, and then there we go. You can see there. So it's about 4.8 volts. And then when I plug in the drive, we'll watch see, it's pulling almost a half amp there at startup. So that's a reason why you don't want to load up your Raspberry Pi too much. Now, we've got that out of the way. So we've got that. We'll just leave the power meter running until I get ready to do the next drive. So let's click on scan, and we'll see if it sees the drives out there, because supposedly 5 is supposed to be a little more USB friendly. And guess what? It does. Now, and trust me, this was the part that I was hoping to avoid. Now, if you notice, there's a serial number on here. What I would suggest doing is, this one is now, you see this device name right here, /dev/SDA. I would label the drive with that, and I would label the slot. That may seem like overkill, but if you have to reconnect things or something's not playing nice, then this will help you get things put together that much faster. So I'm going to stop momentarily, hook up the other 2 drives, and we will continue on. Now, to get the drives ready, the first thing that you'll want to do, and I do this as a matter of course, you don't have to, but I would go through each one of the drives, single click on there, and then go to wipe, and you will say yes. You can say quick wipe. We just want to make sure that the drives are totally clean and ready to go. It'll take just probably maybe 20 seconds for a 2 terabyte drive, and I've already done it on the other 2, so we're good there. Now the next step is to go down to RAID management. Now, in the earlier version, I had to do a lot of keyboarding commands to make things play nice. So these showed up, scan worked just fine. I go down to RAID management. Of course, nothing is there because we wouldn't have a RAID option at this point. So they'll let you scan USB drives, but according to here is USB drives will not be listed, too unreliable. Well, for if it's a business production NAS, okay, I understand that one, but this is for those of us at home. This is going to be a backup system for me. So I've been running the other one for over a year and have not had a problem that wasn't due to something that I did. So what we're going to have to go do is we will shift over to our keyboard window, to our command line window. And then what I can do here is I've already got the command listed here. And what we're doing is you're using something called mdadm. I think it's multi-disk admin. We're telling it to create. This is the name we're giving it to the RAID 5 array. We're doing it level 5, which is RAID 5. We're telling you there's 3 drives. And here are each of the drive names. Now, those you can see over here when we go up to disks. So you'll see dev, SDA, SDB, SDC. So that's just confirming what's already there. So let's go back to this other window, and I'm going to copy this. And since I don't see, okay, we're just going to copy this. And then we will go here and hit enter. All right, so apparently the command has changed since I last used it. So we'll take out the MD from that, and we should be okay there. Unrecognized option. Okay, there's something I haven't done right here. And let's go look. Okay, I think I see the problem. I've got dashes in front of this. So what we will do is we'll go back up here to the original one. And this is where having notes is good, but sometimes notes can not work for you. You'll hit enter. Okay, now it took the command that time. All right, and this, what supposedly is going to happen here is it uses the rebuilding process. So we can go in here, and now if we go into RAID management, guess what? It's there. So that was the command to make things work. The device name is MD127. There's the name I gave it, and there's its device name. So that's fine. And there's the 3 devices that are a part of that array. So at this point, this is where you get into the pregnant pause. There is no rushing this one. It's going to simply take as long as it takes. And with USB drives, okay, it's going to take a while. You just have to get used to that. I know I wasn't happy about it. I've got a timer right now as to when I started this one. I will probably check in within a few hours to get a sense of how long this is going to take. It could take well into the night. Of course, I'm dealing with drives larger than I've done before, and that's running right along, so I can't really complain. So the command that I used, and I'll have this in the notes, we told it to create, gave it the name, so RAID 5, 3 devices, and that. So really, you use that command, that makes it, that manually overrides what the GUI has been configured not to do. So that's at least better than nothing. I mean, it's showing degraded because it's, you know, it's in the process of rebuilding, it's recovering, and it will show you, we expand that out a little bit. It's saying 577 minutes, so you figure 60 minutes and an hour, figure about 10 hours. So later tonight, I will take a look at this one. And that's probably like the Microsoft progress bar. I wouldn't bet the bank on it, but at least now we're one step closer. And then once we get this done, then we will have to create the file system on it. Because see, right now, if we go into file system, and it's trying to see what's out there, and it's going to time out because right now we're tying up a lot of the processor with what's going on, and it's got the existing file systems that was up there. And if we click on create, and again, it's got to go out and look. Of course, we're, like I said, we're tying up the processor, and it shows that already there, except, you know, external USB. I'm not going to push it and create it. I'm going to let the array complete building because I don't want to mess with what's going on at this point, just as an abundance of caution. So we'll be back in a little bit and we'll see how things are progressing. Let me bring you up to date. The RAID 5 array finished rebuilding, or actually building itself, a little after 10 hours. So it was late last night when it finally got done. So that's why we're picking this up into the next day. So now we've got to finish building a file system and a share and everything so that we can start putting files on the system. So let's switch over to our trusty OMV5 server. So what we'll go through and do, okay, thank you. And the software will time out like that for safety purposes. And have to remember the right password here. And that can be adjusted. It's just a matter of it's not that big of a deal to log back in. So as you can see, if we go down here to RAID management, you'll see it says clean, everything looks okay. So we're good to go. So now literally we walk down the list. So we'll go to File System, and I could theoretically have done some of this while it was building the array, but I didn't feel like pushing my luck, because if it's going to come back to bite me, that would have done it. So we'll click on Create, and then we will drag down here and click on the software RAID. Notice it has the ext-usb. That's just the name I gave it. So we will just call it ext-usb again, and can't use dashes. Interesting. And can't use underlines. All right, well, we'll just call it ext-usb. Can't use periods. Leave the file system set at ext4. There's really not a reason to change it for what we're doing here, and I've yet to ever have to change it. There may be specific reasons. So we'll click OK. Do we want to format? Okay, creating file system. And this may take just a few minutes, but I wouldn't expect it to take as long as, well, actually, it will take some time. I was misinformed here. Okay, so again, this is going to, if block 678 out of 29. All right, yeah, so it's going to be a little while. So tell you what, we'll pick this one back up when it's through. And meanwhile, we can go ahead and close it. If you want to leave it open, you can. It will show initial. Let me get it out. Let's see if we can get this out here. Now we have to click down in here, I guess. It says initializing. I was trying to see if we can get a little more detail, but apparently once you close out of that window, you can't really see what's going on. Needless to say, okay, there's the label we put in. There is the device name, dev MD127. And then that's about all we can do while it is initializing. Well, it took a little bit longer to get things up to where I'd hoped they would be. The part of establishing the RAID 5 array or data set, whatever you call it, took a little over 11 hours. So, okay, it's USB. I understand that. It just was hoping for a little bit sooner. So what we're up to now is if we go down here and we go to RAID management. Now, when it's free, you're going to have seen that. So that's good. Now, the file system, and I'm doing this as a review because I actually hit a little bit of a bump here. We actually went through and did the creation. We picked the device. Of course, nothing's going to show now at this point. But during the process, there was a transformer or a fuse on the line that blew, and I lost power for several hours right while it was building this. So had to restart the process and also had to wait for the consistency remirroring to happen within the RAID 5 set. So that got done. This took about, it was about 3 hours to get done. So for a 4 terabyte package, that's not bad. And again, so when this is done, what we've got to do next before you can do anything is we'll click on that line, and then you've got to mount it. If you don't mount it, it is not going to work. So we'll click on mount, and it says configuration has been changed. Fine. Okay, so we've got it. Well, you can't see that, so let's turn that off. So it says configuration has been changed. So we'll click apply. And it takes just a second. Sometimes, okay, I had to click more than once. Okay, there we go. You must apply the changes. So it says now it's online, and there's a minor amount of overhead to be done. And for some reason, it was a little picky on taking the changes. So I had to click it again. And of course, I may have wanted to click a little bit sooner than what it was ready for, so I'll take that responsibility on it. Okay, so that banner has gone away up top. It says mounted, online. Now, remember when I said we were going to be walking our way down the chain? Okay, so remember we've got all the drives are showing up. Now, just to keep in mind, the serial number you see here is not the one that's going to be on the case of these USB drives. And before you start to say, well, USB drives aren't supported, yes and no. They don't encourage you to do it, but let's face it, when you're first learning how to do it, what's the most affordable kind of drive to get your hands on? A USB drive. And this is going to be a backup NAS system. I'm not going to be running a company on it. So that, it will be fine. There are some risks with it, but this is an affordable way to get started to help you figure out how you're going to proceed. So again, the serial number, that's the actual drive inside the enclosure. So that number is probably not going to match up to what you see on the drive casing. And then RAID management. So we took all those drives, made them an array. Then we put a file system on it. And I went with external or ext4. So that's all set to go. So now if we go down here to share folders and we click add, and we will just call this OMV5 data. And I'm trying to have the name of the OMV instance that I'm running in here so that it's just easier to pick things out. I've got another one on 4 that we'll be working with at some point in conjunction with this one, so I'm not quite sure if I'm going to move that one to 5 or not, because it's also on an older Raspberry Pi 3. So we've got the name in there, and then of course it only has just the one device group. I'll get it here in a moment. It only has just the one file system out there. And by default, it's putting that in there. So we're going to leave that. So it's going to be the name, which is what you see up there. So that's fine. Now for permissions, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. If you're used to using an external USB drive that you hook up to your laptop, this is what I'm going to be mirroring. You can turn on all sorts of security, but I'm trying to help you transition to where you first get used to using this on an external system, and then you can turn up all sorts of security. So that's why for those of you that are security conscious, and I'll admit I try to do that as much as I can practically, but this is why I'm taking that approach. So we'll go down here and we'll say everyone can read write, and we'll click save. Okay, again, we've got a configuration message. So we will go up here and click apply. This time it apparently I either clicked on it better or it's a little bit faster. Okay, I had to click on, I may have to check my mouse. It seems like it's acting a little quirky. So that's, okay, that's set up there. So now this is where we will go down to setting up SMB share. Now, if you've got Macs at home like I do, I'm going to have to make some adjustments because I'm used to using AFP or AppleTalk filing protocol. That has been deprecated because apparently the newer Macs are using SMB or CIFS. So I'm going to have to make some adjustments on my side, namely because I've got some older Macs that are not on the latest operating system, but that's a choice that I've made. So let's click on SMB CIFS. And if you're not running a server at home, leaving this in workgroup is probably going to be fine. And that's the approach I'm taking at this point, because I normally, if I do have servers up from time to time, I don't have a domain that's fully functional there. So I'm going to leave it in workgroup. Okay, so saved. It didn't have to. Okay, there we go. That was the message I was waiting for. So we'll click apply. So I guess it's taken a little bit of time to process this, and we'll say accept. So you've got to kind of let OpenMediaVault go at its own pace. And once we get that done, then we should be ready to go here momentarily. Okay, now we'll go to shares. We'll click add. and shared folder, and see that was that OMV5 data that we picked up earlier. And if guest allowed is selected, okay, let's go back up here and look at it. If guest allowed is selected and the login credential provided, then access this guest. Always access this guest only when, okay, and that's fine. At this point, we're going to do only guests because, again, I'm trying to help you transition from just using an external drive. And there's always things that you can do to turn up additional security. So we'll click on save. And again, our friend has popped up here. So it's just always kind of have to double accept whatever changes you're making. And while that can be annoying, it's actually a good thing so that you're not caught with you made a change you didn't think you'd make. It should be done here just a second. All right, now that's ready to go. So I'm going to minimize this, and we are going to map a network drive. We're going to browse, and it should show work group here in just a second. And depending on how long your system may have been up, it may take it a little while to find it. Okay, there's OMV5. So it's seeding it natively. Of course, I've left this one in work group, and we are going to click that, and then we'll click OK and reconnect at sign in. We're not going to worry about using credentials. And we're going to call, I'm not going to take the letter Z that it wants me to. I'm going to go with O for OMV. And so now if we go down here, there we go. And then we'll just drag this debug text file over there just to make sure everything's working the way we thought it would. And I got a little brave. Okay. Didn't wait for the plus sign to show up. I've had this happen with Windows 10 before. So we are going to copy. Now click over here in the window and we will go paste. Okay. It just, for some reason, my Windows 10 is just acting a little bit on the attitudinal side. So as you can see, it really is pretty straightforward. We've gone over everything that has to get this up and running. We went through setting up a Raspberry Pi standard, what I call a standard SD. We installed OMV5 because it's got a new way of doing it. Then we went about setting up a RAID set here. And let me get the window back open. We first put in the drives. And I brought them in one at a time just so that I could ID them. And then what I did, and I'll show you a picture here in just a second. And I actually went through and labeled each one of the drives. We'll go switch over here to demo cam, which is not up yet. All right. And no, demo cam is up. Left the lens cap on. So we'll go over here to demo cam, and it's a little bit messy here right now, but you can see where I've labeled each one of the drives. And that way there is no question. And then I took it to the next step, and you'll notice down on the USB hub, I labeled where each one plugged in. Now, it shouldn't make a difference once they've been plugged in, but just from a troubleshooting standpoint, I wanted to make sure that everything was the way that it should be. So just to review, we've gone through and set up the drives. Again, now I did do a quick wipe on those just to make sure everything was hunky-dory. Then from command line, we then inserted them into the RAID set, and I'll have that in the notes for this video, whether you're seeing on YouTube or one of the other platforms, so that you can see how I did it, because OpenMediaVault, for their own reasons, don't feel that USB drives are stable. Well, yeah, I won't disagree with them, but it's also a very affordable way to kind of get used to this so that you can see when you get ready to go to a full-size system or a bigger system, you kind of know what you're got a better feel for what you're doing. So in this case, we set up the RAID, and that one took about 11 hours from what we talked about earlier. Then we put a file system on it, and it just went with ext4. Once we did that, then we set up a shared folder. So that's a reference point to be used by one of the other services. And then we went down here to SMB. We enabled SMB. And then we went down to the setting up the share. So we referenced the shared folder that we had set up here. And then we made it browsable, and we said only guests, so we don't have to worry about passwords. Again, moving forward, that's something you probably want to enable. But if it's only being used for a certain purpose, in my case, it's only going to be handling YouTube backups, then you're pretty much set, ready to go. Because that way, it's just like using the external plug-in drive that you used before. I hope this has been helpful to you. I've got other videos planned because there's other things that you can do with OpenMediaVault. As you can see, and let me close that screen back out, we can make it an FTP server. We can turn up NFS, which is a method of accessing the drives that you will see probably in commercial applications. I've used both iSCSI and NFS. Just happened to be the system I was using. iSCSI had a 2 terabyte limitation on the volume size, so I had to go to NFS. So it's just a matter of how you want to do things. And rsync we'll be talking about another way, because I'm actually going to start synchronizing multiple NASs so that I can make one my master and treat the others as backups, and they will just automatically synchronize out, so I don't have to copy from NAS to NAS to NAS. And something happens if I did have to leave the office quickly, I could take the smallest NAS and at least have some of my one copy of my files with me. Again, that's a personal decision. You can never have enough NASs, and this way you can have one you can have them dedicated by purpose, because I certainly probably wouldn't hang more than about 3 drives off of it. Although if you're going to go past 1 drive, you pretty much need to use a powered hub, and you saw from the picture earlier what I had done. So I'm going to have notes for all this for however you're getting to this, so that you can see the steps that I went through. I'll have the command line in there so you can see how to set up the RAID 5 set, because it's very functional, and I have never had a problem. Now, I'm not going to say that you won't, but in the couple of years that I've been working with OMV, I've never had a drive fail situation due to the drive going out or a configuration issue. It was a case of one time I forgot to plug in the powered USB hub. Well, that's totally on me. That's not a USB stability problem. But go over this, kind of get a feel for it. You can see from the affiliate links I'll have in there what you'll need to go get if you don't already have a lot of these parts at hand. If you're watching this on YouTube, you will see videos on the screen that are similar to the one you've just watched, or other content that YouTube thinks you might be interested in. If this video helps you or provides value, please click on that like button, thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please click on subscribe now and enable notifications. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.